Without further ado, I would like to call the study session to order. It's about 5:35. And we have one item on this evening. Oh. Yes, given that we noticed that Commissioner Anderson is not here, I believe it would be appropriate to have one of our alternates come up. They're going to fight over it, I can see. I can see they have figured it out. It was a difficult battle, but yeah. With that being said, while he's coming up, we are going to begin. And as I said, there's one item. Number one, DR 23-160, Clyde Capital, Hamilton Court. And I believe we'll talk to Ms. Nicole Russell. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, Nicole Russell, Senior Planner. The application before the Commission for Study session this evening is DR 23-160 for Clyde Capital Hamilton Court, with site plan, landscaping, grading and drainage, elevations, floor plans, lighting, and colors and materials for approximately a 1.16 acre parcel generally located south of Elliott Road and east of Arizona Avenue and zoned light industrial with a planned area development overlay. Here is a map showing the subject parcel. It is surrounded by industrial zoning with the City of Chandler on the opposite side of the railroad tracks. The parcel is located within the Elliott Commerce Center, an industrial park located on the western boundary of the town limits. The applicant is proposing a 21,352 square foot building with a 1,900 square foot office, associated parking, and secured yard. The site is designed to accommodate light industrial uses. The applicant is requesting CDs at risk, and this is why it's coming to the study session. Staff is also going to show several slides of the design of the site for any input from the commission. Here's the site plan showing the building as with the associated parking, as well as there's a mezzanine above the office with access inside of the warehouse. The elevations show a 34-foot, 8-inch tall building that consists of one story with a mixture of smooth-face CMU and split-face CMU. The recessed entrance of the building includes a metal awning and metal accents to emphasize the building entrance. The exterior of the building is an alternating design with different tan colors to provide visual interest to the exterior of the building. Roll-up doors are located on the north and west sides of the building. The lighting proposed for the site is at 20 feet high on the sides of the building except for the south for security. Here's the landscape plan showing the 15% required landscaping for the site. Here is the floor plan showing the roll-up doors as well as the office and the mezzanine above. The applicant has been provided first, second, and third review comments. There is the staff report did indicate that there were, at the time of writing the staff report, concerns or corrections for the grading and drainage. That has since been approved with markups that will be addressed as part of the CD submittal. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Any commissioners like to kick it off with any questions for Nicole? Comments? I believe we have some comments from Vice Chair Bianchi.
Hi, Nicole. Yeah, no questions. Just in regards to feedback, site development regulations are all met or exceeded. I think you said in your staff report that they're going to landscape the secured yard, and they've already worked out the drainage issues. So in that regard, I personally wouldn't have a problem if they move forward with the CDs at their own risk. As far as the design, I think the materials and the colors overall look acceptable. The south elevation's a bit stark, but given that it's industrial, there is some variation there, but I'm okay with it overall. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Anyone else? Well, Nicole, I would pretty much echo it. I think it's perfectly okay with going to CDs. Stark is a good word for it, but as an industrial, I don't think it's actually somewhat undulating. So I'm cool with that. Unless you have any other questions, I think we're good.
No other questions. Thank you. And this will be on the April Planning Commission agenda.
Very well. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay. Now that we've gotten through the one item, let's go to discussion of the regular meeting agenda. I see on the agenda we have On consent agenda, number 6 is DR 23-53, the Gilmore, and number 7, DR 23-120, Volterra Commercial EV Charging Facility. Anybody have any reason that they'd like to have those removed from consent? Anyone in the public here that's seeking to speak out on either number 6 or number 7 and would like them removed from consent? I don't have any comment cards. I do not see a significant amount of clamoring forward to speak, so I will assume they're okay. On to the non-consent, we have number 8, GP 22-16 Lumberyard, and Z 22-16 Lumberyard, that's number 9, which are shown as a continue, but we will leave them there to vote on them. Number 10, Heritage, Z 23-08 Heritage North, and number 11, Z 23-10B LDC text amendment. So, is there anyone that wants to make suggestions to move either number 10 or 11 to the consent?
Chairman, the lumberyard, although it's a recommendation for continuance, we have been informed that there is somebody who would like to speak on that.
Oh, there is, okay. That's correct. So then if whomever it is that would like to speak, please fill out the comment cards. I believe they're in the back of the room. And then we will have that one on the agenda to speak on. Okay, and then the other two, I imagine, will stay? Okay,
The land development code text amendment is only the outbuilding stuff. I don't have any problem with it, and the last 2 times it's come forward, it didn't seem like anyone cared, but I don't care strongly either way.
Eva, do you want to present that?
It is up to you. There's nobody that I'm aware of that had any questions on it or wished to speak.
There we go. We've heard it a couple of times, so I don't have any issues with it going on consent.
Okay. I believe we have consensus then. Number 11, we can entertain a motion to move. All right. Well, with that, then I will conclude the study session. And I believe we have 5:44, so we will meet back here in 16 minutes to kick off the regular agenda meeting. Thank you. All right, if everybody's ready, I'm going to call to order the regular meeting, and I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me. Okay, Eva, could I please get a roll call?
Commissioner Everett? Commissioner DeGravina? Commissioner Simon?
Here.
Commissioner Gage? Here. Commissioner Fay?
Present.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Vice Chairman Bianchi?
Here.
Chairman Munt?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Eva. Okay, moving on to number 3, we're going to look at the approval of the agenda. In the study session, we had a little bit of discussion over the consent and non-consent, and I believe we talked at number 11, the text amendment could be moved. If there's a motion, I'd be willing to entertain one now.
Chairman, if you're ready. I would move to approve with the following change of moving item 11Z23-10 to tonight's consent agenda with items 6 and 7.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Second from Commissioner Fay. Any discussion? Okay, please vote. All right, 7-0, unanimous. And I would just like to point out that I noticed that it now tells us if our vote has been cast. It's a very nice new addition technologically. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move into some communications. So communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. The Commissioner Board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to state law, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration. So this would be any citizens that would like to speak on items outside of the current agenda. I do not have any comment cards. Is there anyone that wanted to speak on something not on the agenda? Okay, very well, thank you. I don't see any. We will close that and move into number 5, report from council liaison on current events.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of considerations. One is something that's not getting much publicity that we should announce at every public meeting that we can is that we had a partial crew of the USS Arizona here in Gilbert this past week. And if you're not aware or the public's not aware, we are the sponsoring city of the new USS Arizona, which hasn't been in effect for some 50 or 60 years. And it's quite a big deal, and we want to make sure that people are aware that the submarine is under construction right now, and the christening will happen probably into the next year. And it'll be a pleasure to be the sponsoring city of that new submarine. Secondly, something that you may want to pay attention if you're not watching things that are going on down in the legislature. You know how volatile it can be down there sometimes. There are a couple of bills that affect local control, and you ought to pay attention to those. They have to do with housing. It could challenge where and how we place or review housing projects in the town. And it's those bills, I forget the numbers of those bills, but look those up because there are several bills that really affect local control. And that's something that's very important to all the municipalities. I know the League of Cities is following them very closely so that we don't lose the control that we have over zoning and planning in our community. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Anderson. Okay, Moving on to the public hearing consent. All items below are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of items where, after opening the public meeting, no person requests the item to be removed from consent calendar. If such a request is made, the commission shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate action. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion, as we have done. So with that, currently on the consent, we have number 6, DR 23-53, the Gilmore. Number 7, DR 23-120, Volterra Commercial EV Charging Facility. And number 11, Z23-10B, LDC Text Amendment. If there's any discussion, otherwise I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda. Well, and also if there's anyone out there that wants any of those removed, let me know, because you can still speak before we pass the motion. Okay, very good. I will then entertain a motion.
Chairman, if you're ready. I would move to approve the agenda as consent calendar as presented.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Simon with the second. Okay. Any discussion? Very well. Please vote. Unanimous, 7-0. Motion passes. Moving along into the public hearing non-consent. Non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. Now, we have a number of the comment cards, the yellow comment cards up here for some of the folks in the room. If there's anyone else that is still interested and has not filled one out, please do so. I believe the yellow cards, as Vice Chairman Bianchi was holding up there, they're in the back. So if you did want to speak, oh, she was shaking her head. Are there no more comment cards? Okay, yes, please just fill one of those out and then give it to one of the staff, and they can bring it up to us when that item is up. Okay. Starting out, we have number 8 and 9, GP 22-16, the lumberyard, and I know that Kristen is out, so Veronica was going to come up and put up an aerial. This item was requested to be continued, but we have a number of members of the public that would like to speak, so we are going to open it and listen to the public comment. Okay. First card that I have is, and if I mispronounce your name, I do apologize, Robert Gervais. He's looking to speak on number 8 and 9. He is opposed to the item, and he does not wish to speak. Next is Brian Hookham. Wants to speak on 8 and 9. He is opposed to the item and wishes to speak. Mr. Hookham, please come up to the mic. You'll hit the button and it'll go red. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and just begin whenever you're ready, sir.
My name is Brian Holcomb, and I reside in Neely Ranch. I'm here to urge you to vote no on this development. There are many reasons to reduce the density or find another use for this location. Hopefully, listing a few of these negative items will help keep this high-density development from being constructed. It is my understanding that when the general plan was issued, the intent was to have access across the tracks, allowing traffic to flow north to an arterial. Since that will no longer be an option for many years or possibly ever, it will leave this development with a single point of access for emergency vehicles. I do not recall ever seeing an apartment complex without a minimum of 2 points of access to collectors or arterials for emergency services. Also, with a single point of access, traffic needing to go north, possibly half the traffic, will cut through the subdivision to gain access to Cooper Road. This could be hundreds, if not thousands, of cars skipping the lights at Neely and Elliott and Cooper and Elliott and going through our neighborhood. This is already the case on a smaller scale for the lumber yard, where the HOA has tried to mitigate this current issue with speed bumps. These new apartment complexes have that new car smell in the beginning, but go downhill soon after commitments are fulfilled. Many get sold after 10 years and eventually wind up in a portfolio where the shareholders don't care about the aesthetics or the community and become run down. In closing, I don't feel this is a fitting location and hope the commissioners reduce or change the proposed development density or use. There are better places in Gilbert suited for their proposed high-density complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hukum. Next up, I have Michael France. He wants to speak on GP 22-16. He is opposed to the item, and I don't know if you wanted to speak. Yes, okay. Please come up, 3 minutes, sir. Start when you're ready.
My name is Michael France. I'm a resident of Neely Ranch Homestead. The major crossroads are Elliott and Cooper. My concern are based on two elements of the zoning modification requested by the developer. High-density multifamily requested instead of medium-density multifamily, and a reduction in open space requested instead of open space per existing zoning standards. The site is across the street from a high-voltage power substation, across the street from an unsightly solar farm, 500 feet from a wastewater groundwater recharge pond, adjacent to a railroad, less than 1,000 feet from a sewage treatment plant. The above detrimental factors combined with high-density multifamily housing and the requested reduced open space is a combination that will result in significantly less desirable property for residents compared to other multifamily homes in the Heritage District. Please limit the zoning request to medium-density multifamily home, 3-floor max height, like the adjacent high-quality property, district lofts, medium-density multifamily, with open space as defined in the city zoning requirements.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the next, I believe, is Carrie Lewis, number 8 and 9. She's opposed to the item and she wishes to speak. Please come up. And, okay, 3 minutes, Ms. Lewis, and start when you're ready.
It's Lewis, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Lewis.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Lewis. I live at 350 West Century Avenue for the last almost 30 years now. It is the southeast corner of Neely and Elliott. I will be drastically affected by the increased traffic there. One way in, one way out, minimum number of cars. What are we planning on, 400, 450 for a 300-unit apartment complex? You know, the safety has been bad. They finally put in the street light there. It's reduced the accidents, but it hasn't stopped them. And as far as safety in the surrounding neighborhoods, what is the plan there? Who is going to take care of the extra security measures to ensure that the existing communities, residences are still safe? In the 30 years I've lived in my home, one time was I broken into, and that was when I first moved in. Nothing since then. What are our reassurances that the traffic is going to be taken care of and the safety of the surrounding communities be taken care of? Possibly the developers could buy some homes that are now Airbnbs or flippers in the areas around there. Town of Gilbert would provide those free of charge to Phoenix police officers, fire department, something to give us some added security in the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now have Annette Mickle, 8 and 9, opposed to the item and wishes to speak. Please come up, turn on the microphone, red, and begin when you're ready. The button on the base There, yeah, you're
Found
on.
it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Annette Mickle. I've lived in Neely Ranch since 1997. In fact, our home was the very first one built. We moved to Gilbert for a number of reasons. It's a beautiful community with wonderful schools. But over the past few years, we've seen the density of the population grow and grow and grow. If you go down towards Santan, there's thousands of apartment units that are going up all the time. And I think the character of our community has been affected gravely. This proposal of building high-density apartments in that one little spot with one access road going in, I believe is a mistake. Many of my neighbors here have talked about the traffic. I go for early morning walks, and let me tell you, the people from the lumberyard always cut from Cooper, and not just now that the intersection is impaired. But even before that, they cut from Cooper through Aviary to Neely and then to work. It's the only way, aside from driving down Neely to the Signal, to get, over to Cooper. And that's going to happen. You can tell people don't do it, but they're going to do it. And I'm very concerned. This is a community with many small children, and they play outdoors like children like to do. I think it's a safety hazard. You know there's going to be traffic and congestion, and you know they're going to cut through our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now have John Heil, 8-9. He's opposed to the item. And I have both boxes checked for wish and don't wish to speak. So if you'd like to speak, Mr. Heil, please come up.
I'm John Hiley. My issues were covered by the second speaker. It's just a poor location with the railroad there, the sewage plant in the area, or the recycling water. I just want to reinforce what he said, because I agree with him 100%. There are other options for that land. It could be a dog park for all I care, or a playground. But I certainly don't see an apartment complex. Traffic on Avery is just grown immensely since the construction started on Cooper. And it's something we've got to consider. Other than building a bridge over the railroad tracks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I have a number of other cards, and they were indicated that they did not wish to speak. If I read your name and you do wish to speak, please indicate so. I have Thomas Daler, 8-9. He's opposed to the item, and you do wish to speak? Okay, come on up, Thomas.
Hi, thank you. My name is Thomas Daler. I am a resident and homeowner on Aviary Way in the Neely Ranch neighborhood. I'm here to express my concerns regarding the proposed residential development at the Foxworth-Galbraith site. I understand this development fits with the long-term plans of the Heritage District and is beneficial to many downtown businesses and the town as a whole. However, the concerns of existing residents who will be most impacted by this development should not be ignored. My primary concern is with the increased traffic flow on Aviary Way and the safety implications this will have, particularly for the children in our neighborhood. It is obvious future residents at this development will be cutting through Aviary Way to access Cooper Road and ultimately the US 60. This will result in a dramatic increase in traffic in our neighborhood. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter, and my wife and I are expecting our second child in July. The additional traffic will expose my daughters and all the children in Neely Ranch to additional risk of traffic accidents. My neighbors have proposed a fair compromise of closing off the east side of Aviary Way to mitigate the risk. However, it is my understanding this proposal was rejected by city planning. If the town would like to go ahead with this development, then it needs to find a compromise with residents of Neely Ranch. Closing off Aviary Way is a fair compromise for all parties involved. If that is not possible, I would like an explanation of why it cannot be done and an alternative plan to mitigate our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now have Sheila Williams. She's opposed to items 8 and 9, and she does not wish to speak. And I have Jamie Thomas, items 8 and 9, opposed to the item, does not wish to speak. Comments, stop ruining Gilbert. Okay. Is there anyone else that still would wish to speak that has not filled out a comment card? Yes, please, if you could fill out a yellow card from the back and then bring it up, we'll get you a chance to speak. And you can come and speak, ma'am, and then fill it out after and just give it to us following, just so we have your name and everything for the record, please.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a terrible place.
Pull the microphone down just so that everyone can hear you, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a terrible location. It's very noisy. The train goes right by, blowing its horn to make a signal for the stop, for the Gilbert roadway. And it does it at 1 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of construction noise. We hear the beep, 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 beep of things moving back. And also, when the train goes by and blows its whistle, then it starts off a whole lot of coyotes live in the aviary. And they start howling when the train blows its whistle or when the police cars use their sirens. And also, on Friday and Saturday nights, there is live music in downtown Gilbert, and we can hear the music where we live. I live in the middle section of Aviary. And no, I don't hear it when my TV's on, but when I turn it off to go to bed, I can hear it, and it's on till 1 o'clock in the morning. So if I can hear it, that's going to be a disruption for any of those people, unless you really build apartments with like brick walls and double pane windows, they're going to be disturbed by it. And that's why I say it is a terrible place to put it.
Miss, could you please state your name for the record?
Paula Grimes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grimes. And I've seen a number of other individuals grab the card, so if you do wish to speak, please come up and one at a time and speak, and then fill out the card after. Just come up and state your name. Or if you didn't want to and just wanted to fill out a card, I don't want to put undue pressure. Yes, sir, please come up, state your name, and then speak, and you can fill the card out following, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jason Yarberry. Paula is my neighbor along Aviary Way, and I too have concerns with the area. One has been normally spoken about already was the traffic and congestion, because I too see a lot of that with the existing tenants with Foxworth Galbraith, towing service and others, landscaping services coming through there. We do have speed bumps to some of them. That is just a mere suggestion of some of the rated speeds that do come through there. I am concerned also with the amount of people moving into the area, of how the infrastructure within Gilbert for sewer, water, within the environment, as well as other social infrastructure services, schools, how well that they can accommodate the additional capacity of people moving in to the area. So Again, it was noted that capping everywhere in Eastway was not approved with this. I would like to, if we can look through this, is possibly of reducing this from high density to medium density or other uses of the land that could be used that to help the residents of Gilbert. Also, I'd like to propose having the Neely extended over the railroad tracks as another outlet for traffic, because right now with the construction in the at Cooper and Elliott, having another area availability in and out would be appreciative of the current members there. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Are there any other individuals that wish to speak? Yeah, please come up, sir. And just state your name and then speak, and then you drop the card off after, please.
My name is Jerome Breyer. I'm a resident of Neely Ranch. I serve on the board of directors along with our second speaker, and there might be a few others in the room. I wanted to state my opposition to this plan because it just doesn't make any sense to put a apartment complex out there in the middle of an industrial island with all of the neighbors around it being, I mean, take a look at the 12 lots that are industrial lots, light industrial, if not medium industrial, to the south of the property. You're really alienating and making an unattractive place to live by allowing this to become residential of any type. It makes a lot of sense that with the news from last September with the turnover of the land that's going to become the water retention basin, that this that it becomes a much lighter impact usage for the community. So I would like to state that I agree with everything that was said by my neighbors as well as the other people in the area who have spoken. So I just would like to state my opposition and don't let this project go through. People shouldn't be living out there north, south, west, and I guess the only neighbors that they have that are also residential are to the east, but they aren't even attached in the same way that this is a one-way in and out situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Okay. We have a note on these items that there is a continuance to April 3rd. We'll do these as separate motions, so I will entertain a motion. And just to note for the public that approval of this motion is simply approving a continuance to where it will be heard on April 3rd, 2024.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the continuance of item 8 GP 22-16 Lumberyard. Continuance to April 3rd.
April 3rd. Okay. We have a motion. Was that a second, Commissioner Simon?
I made the motion.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I can't second myself.
I'll second.
Wow.
I
Okay.
was throwing my voice, I think.
That was good. He's very ventriloquial. Okay. So we have a motion from Commissioner Simon and a second from Vice Chairman Bianchi. Any other discussion? We'll close it. Please vote. Motion carries. That item will be continued to April 3rd. I'll entertain a motion for item number 9.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the continuance of item number 9, Z 22-16 Lumberyard to April 3rd.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Simon, a second from Vice Chair Bianchi. Please vote. Motion carries 7-0. That item will also be heard April 3rd, 2024. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and expressing your opinions on it. And we will now move on to item number 10, Z23-08 Heritage North. And we will bring up Ms. Ashley McDonald.
Thank you, Chairman and Commission. Happy to be before you tonight to talk about Heritage North. You saw this last in January as a study session item, and then we've had a number of changes and evolutions of this project since that time, so I'm happy to share those with you tonight. The project, as you may recall, is located at the southwest corner of Juniper Avenue and Gilbert Road. This site you've seen a number of times throughout the years. So by way of background, it's about 11.97 acres for the total site. The PAD was originally approved in January of 2022, with design review and use permits following that in February of 2022. Because this is in the Heritage District, the design review application is reviewed by the Redevelopment Commission, but the Planning Commission still does make a recommendation on the PAD. So this commission won't see the design review application as it moves forward, but it will be reviewed by the Redevelopment Commission. The request tonight is to amend the existing PAD. They are specifically looking to modify their approved development plan to allow for phasing, as well as modify conditions of approval that were previously approved. To orient the commission to this development, once again, there are 9 total buildings proposed on this site. Starting at the very top, Building 1 is the large building at the northwest corner of the site. That's the multifamily building, which wraps residential parking garage. Building 2 is located at the hard corner. That's the hotel site. Building 3, located just south of the hotel site, is a 2-story building, office on the 2nd floor with ground floor retail type uses. Buildings 4, 5, and 6 are at the center of the site. Those are anticipated to be retail or restaurant buildings. And then Building 7, located at the south end of the site, is the proposed office building. Building 8 is the 2nd parking garage on site. That's a 5-story parking garage adjacent to Ash Street, and then Building 9 is a kiosk at the center of the site. As part of this project, the applicant is required to do a number of public amenities, first being the completion of the commons open space that's located at the center of the site. They're also required to improve Water Tower Way, which is the paseo that connects the south end of the Heritage District all the way up to Juniper Avenue. They're also required to make some improvements along the Western Power Line Trail. And so those are all part of the original approval of this development and anticipated to continue to be part of this project as it moves forward. The applicant, as I mentioned, is seeking to modify their development plan to allow for phasing. When this project originally came forward, it was anticipated that it would be built as a single phase. There have been a number of changes in the market, in office development, that have required the applicant to go back and take another look at how this site develops. And so they're proposing that it be developed in 2 phases. The first phase would include everything in green on this site. So they would do all off-site improvements. They would also make the improvements to the Western Power Line Trail, construct the paseo, construct the commons open space, those public amenities. In addition, they would develop the multifamily portion along with that residential garage that is wrapped by the multifamily. They would construct Building 3, which was the 2-story office building with the ground floor retail. And then they would construct Buildings 5 and 6, which are anticipated to be, again, retail or restaurant. And then in addition, you'll see on this plan, they are proposing to construct surface parking in the location of the south garage and the office building. Phase 2 of that development would include the hotel, which may be constructed as part of Phase 1, depending on timing of finding a hotel to locate on that site, and then they would complete the rest of the development that I covered in the initial slide. So they would complete the parking garage, Building 4, which is up against the parking garage, and Building 7, which is the office building. One of the things that we had talked about as part of the study session was that the site does have an approved development agreement on it. The original development agreement did not anticipate this project being built in multiple phases. However, in October of 23, we took that development agreement back to Town Council to revise the schedule of development to allow them to phase it. I've had a few questions on what that phasing plan looked like, so I wanted to provide those some of those dates for you. It is anticipated that construction would start towards the end of this year in the fall of 24. And that's for Phase 1 development. Phase 2 development, we would anticipate to start next year in December of '25, with full completion of the project in December of 2027. So part of the applicant's request, the original application included a condition that indicated that they were not allowed to charge, impose, or collect any fee, toll, or cost for the use of any parking spaces on the property. As the applicant has continued to look at this project, it makes a lot of sense for them to be able to charge for parking, particularly for some of the office users who may want to reserve parking for their tenants, or the residential component who may want to be able to reserve parking space as part of the lease for the apartments themselves. And so they've asked staff to take a look at this condition and see if we could become comfortable with allowing them to reserve some parking. And so this is one of the items that has changed since the study session. And I had indicated at that time that we were continuing to work with the applicant on what these parking numbers were going to look like as far as how many could be reserved. So what we came up with was that in Phase 1, no more than 477 spaces may be reserved. Those reserved spaces would be for the multifamily residents and guests, as well as the hotel. All surface parking would be required to remain public parking, and then 20 spaces in the residential garage would also remain public parking. And then upon completion of Phase 2, and the part here highlighted in yellow, I have an updated development plan, and so I just ask that the commission make that modification to the date in the condition to the most recent plan. Essentially, they removed a hash over the phasing portion for me, but it's got a new date on it. But as part of Phase 2, the entirety of the project shall have no more than 963 spaces reserved. That would allow them to reserve for office employees, hotel guests, multifamily residents, and guests. And then there shall be a minimum of 327 public parking spaces during the hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Any reserved spaces in the south garage shall only be reserved between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then they must be signed to allow parking outside of those hours. And so happy to answer any questions on how we arrived at those numbers if anybody is interested. But we took a look at both the parking study that the applicant provided, as well as how many required spaces, or how many spaces are required for the retail, residential, the retail and restaurant users. And felt comfortable with these numbers that it would provide adequate parking for those users. And then as far as other condition modifications, in your staff report, Condition S was one that was approved with the original ordinance. I left it out of your staff report on accident. It was a copy and paste error, and indicated that we were adding new conditions S, T, and U, but we're actually adding new conditions T, U, and V, just because I had accidentally omitted S. So those conditions we're looking at adding are, as part of the design review application, the applicant shall submit an exhibit identifying how parking will be accommodated during Phase 2 construction. We've also added a condition that temporary construction fencing shall be installed around the future phase, shall be enhanced fencing and approved as part of the design review application. And then if the hotel is constructed as part of Phase 1, the applicant shall utilize valet parking during peak hours until Phase 2 construction is complete to accommodate hotel parking. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that you have. I should add, Redevelopment Commission did hear this item and made a recommendation of approval on it as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. I'll bring it up to see if there's any comments or questions from commissioners. Like Commissioner Fay. Thank you.
Ashley, there's I've got a bunch of points, but there's a number of there's a discussion about parking deficit in the staff report. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So during construction of Phase 2, it is anticipated that the site will have a parking deficit during that construction period. Because they are achieving some of their required parking for Phase 1 on the future site of the office building and the south garage. When they start to construct those, that parking will need to be disturbed, obviously. So that is one of the reasons that the site plan has been revised from the time that you saw it at study session. If you recall, the study session site plan didn't have parking on the office site, but I think the applicant began to realize that as they start to develop that garage, they were going to have to put parking on the office site anyhow. So they will have to provide to us as part of the design review application a plan that shows us what that deficit is going to be for parking. And we do believe that the district, for a period of time during construction, can help to meet some of that parking demand for what the deficit is, but they'll have to provide that information as part of their design review application.
So the district, the Heritage District, is already buckling under a deficit now. How is it going to, I've actually got multiple places here, but how is the district going to absorb the deficit from this project?
So the town does, and the code allows for off-site parking within the Heritage District. And so the town manages the supply of parking spaces that exist in the district, and then what is allocated to some of the businesses. And so we would look at how many spaces are still available for us to allocate, and we could do that temporarily during construction. The town, and I hate to put anybody on the spot, but I know at one point, and I don't know how far along it is, there was consideration of developing some lots with some surface parking. Do you know anything about that? By the park, the university building? Sydney to the rescue.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sydney Bethel Price with the Office of Economic Development in the redevelopment line of service. So the town, when Heritage Park did get fenced off about a year ago, did create a temporary lot of about 250 parking stalls that's located directly west of the university building in anticipation of about those 500 stalls going away. As Ashley talked about, the town does actively manage the parking in the district, and we do have a Heritage District parking master plan that we'd be happy to provide to the commission so that you guys can have some additional information about our shared parking model.
But before we go on, I've read the Heritage District Commission, that parking plan. That document is nonsense. And we don't really need to read it, because I think anyone who deals with the downtown parking knows that the Heritage District is buckling under a shortage of parking. People are making a routine decision to bypass downtown Gilbert. The restaurants aren't full, and people are making a decision deliberately to not go to downtown Gilbert because parking is such a pain. I have friends who used to come to every Saturday farmers market from Mesa who drive past our farmers market to Queen Creek on Saturdays because they can't get parking. So I mean, that parking study, if that's what we're doing to manage, we're not managing. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, I'm not hung up too much on the temporary transient condition when we're going from when we're building phase 2. Phase 1's on the ground and we're going to go to okay, there's a temporariness there. But part of this is we're going to bring in valet parking. The people who don't valet park, what are they going to do? If I decide deliberately not to valet park, I can go park in the free parking that's overburdened right now, can I?
Chairman and Commissioner, it's anticipated that through the condition and a condition in the parking AUP that the hotel is required to offer that to their patrons or their guests. And so, we anticipate that it wouldn't necessarily be something that the public were expecting to use, but that the hotel would use.
Right, but the public, the total amount of parking on this Heritage North is based on the, hotel and the resident and the apartments. If I'm coming to the hotel, I can pay to valet park, or being a middle-class Gilbert type person, I can decide, no, I'm not going to pay to valet park. I'm going to go park in the free stuff down the block, which means we've undersized the parking because we now have a bunch of valet spots that are sitting empty while people are parking in the restaurant spots.
So Chair and Commissioner, remember, to be clear, the deficit is only during construction. The site does park itself.
No.
And that was a requirement of the development agreement.
You're right. Well, two separate topics. So there is a deficit during just construction. I'm not completely sure there isn't a deficit in phase 1, but okay. But the allowance of them to segregate, or the changing of the condition to allow valet parking or to reserve parking, if people don't pay that extra money to take advantage of that extra business model, kind of like the way on airlines nowadays, everyone is packing the carry-on because they don't want to pay the fee to check the bags, which the airlines were designed for all that bags to go underneath. Right now, we have designed a number of spots for the hotel that are going to sit empty because people like me are not going to want to pay the extra fee, and we're going to go park in the free spots, which means those empty spots, I mean, really what it is those empty spots that are being reserved as a profit center shouldn't be counted in meeting the parking requirements for this property.
So Chairman and Commission member, so the fact that the spaces in the south garage are reserved only from 7 to 5, does that change your perspective?
Helms, although I don't see the valet are only going to be reserved from 7 to 5. They're not going to valet park at night?
So the valet is to help alleviate the deficit so if the hotel comes in as part of phase 1, it's really just intended to help alleviate the deficit that will exist during construction of phase 2. At the completion of construction, the site will have sufficient parking for all uses, including the hotel.
But they're not going to get rid of valet parking at that point. They're going to keep it, which means that people
Should they choose to. The condition requires it during construction.
Okay, they're not going to, unless we require them to get rid of it after construction, which we're not. They're going to keep it. Moreover, the residential reserve spots are going to stay as well. So people who get residents, they're not going to be required, maybe they are, they're not going to be required to get a reserve spot. And if they don't get a reserve spot, they're going to add to the deficit, they're going to add to a deficit burdening the downtown heritage district.
And Chair and Commission member, it might be best to have the applicant kind of address how they anticipate managing that parking, because I think we're a little out of my wheelhouse on how that will work from the management perspective.
I know I'm beating up on you, Ashley. Is the applicant Adam? I look forward to beating him up. So the two things that would trigger me, or kind of trigger me, are if you're delaying off-site improvements, which it doesn't look like they are. I mean, I think phasing is in fact not only normal, it's almost inevitable when developing these kind of projects. So phasing is okay. I mean, in fact, it's probably necessary. If your phasing is to take off-site improvements and turf them into the final phase, that's a red alert that somebody intends to not do them, or, wait until the end. But it doesn't look like they're doing that here. It looks like some of the trail improvements and stuff are happening more or less. I'd expect, at a minimum, the off-site improvements to happen when the appropriate phase happens, and it looks like that part's happening, so that's okay. But the other part is, I mean, I'm sorry, it's so bad in downtown sometimes that I'm watching the parking like a hawk. And I think the deficit conversation is more serious than we're making it look. The transient just during construction condition is not that big a concern, because once they start construction, yeah, it'll be but that'll be a year. Come on, that's all right. We can all hold our nose for a year. I think the overall problem is more serious than we make it look, and the idea of reserved spots, the fact that it's during the day, or at least some of it's during the day, helps. The idea of reserving spots, whether it be for valet or for individual businesses or for the apartments, which would be, I assume, 24 hours, or at least some of them 24 hours, has an exacerbating effect and essentially causes a deficit. And I don't think we have the manageable amount of extra parking, particularly in the actual heritage district, that we're kind of glossing over. So anyway, there's kind of sorry, because you're right, I'm beating up on you unfairly. So I kind of went into my big wrap up. That's my big concern. Let me qualify. I'm a big fan of the project as a whole. I think it's great. This change to the project is causing a significant externality that will impact the citizens of Gilbert, and particularly the operation of the Heritage District. Okay, I've dominated. Sorry, I've taken over. Apologies to everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Fay. I just want to ask a clarifying question, because I feel like I'm missing something. The valet parking is a requirement that the town is putting upon the developer, is that correct?
Chairman, that's correct. You can fit more spaces in when you do valet. They can stack the cars and fit some more in. And so that's why we saw that as a benefit.
And am I understanding then, because I believe Commissioner Fay's concern is that there's going to be, you know, I guess an area that's like, no, this is only valet. And I guess at this point, as a planning and zoning, I don't know if we even have any purview over the actual operations of that type of thing. And that's where I think the semantics of saying you want valet because you get more spaces versus an ongoing business. And I guess my question would be, if we left valet out of this, and then a business decided to say, I'm charging for valet based on the zoning characteristics it's in, is that something that would be illegal for them?
Chairman, I don't think that the condition would allow it because the condition has a specified number of spaces that they could reserve. And I think that we would make the determination that the valet would take up the reserved spaces because that's a non-public user who's eating up those spaces. So it would count against what they're allowed to reserve.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Commissioner Simon, please.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is it within the town that we choose to not allow a developer to charge for parking?
So in this particular project, we were very concerned, again, to Commissioner Fay's point, that if they charged for parking on this development, it would burden the town facilities because people would choose to pay or to park in a free space rather than pay. And so that was the reason originally we had put that condition in, was in order to prevent the burden on town facilities by pushing the people that would patron their facility into town parking garages or our facilities. So it's not typical that we have a condition like this, but given the nature of the Heritage District, given the nature of this project, that was something that we wanted to make sure that we were taking into consideration.
Which makes sense, and asking probably an unpopular question with regards to a development. I mean, if obviously we need the parking, so from a development perspective, if they want to build what they're looking at building and we want them to build what we're looking at to have them build, potentially there's a height situation where could they go higher on a parking garage, and then we give them the ability to potentially charge to help recoup some of that cost.
Chairman and Commissioner, there is a section of the development agreement that indicates that they will build a 5-story parking garage, and that's what they've provided. In order to go higher than that, they would need to further amend the PAD to increase the height. And that was not part of the request of this application, obviously, and not advertised. And so that's not something at this time that could be considered. And I would also need to take a look at the development agreement and see if it's limiting to 5 feet, or if it was a parking garage of 5 stories, or if it was a parking garage of at least 5 stories. I think it just said it was a 5-story parking garage. So there may also be that component that would play into it.
Thank you. Understood. I understand we don't want to set this back months again with having to come back. Just a thought, so appreciate it.
I wanted to come back in for a second. Are we requiring that they charge people?
We are not. That was a request of the applicant, that they be allowed to charge for parking.
And how much of the parking are they planning to charge for?
At total build-out, 963 spaces. So that includes both 477 in the north garage, which is used for the residential and the hotel. And then I have math here written down. 477 in the north garage and 486 in the south garage. The parking spaces in the south garage may only be reserved between, again, the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. That coincides with kind of peak hours, making sure that during peak hours of the other uses, that those are unreserved and that they're reserved during peak hours of the office.
And so, and this is where I want to make a distinction that I don't know that I am clear on. When we're kind of, I think, blurring valet and reserved parking. Like a lot of these spaces, correct me if I'm wrong, but they will be reserved for people that live or work there, and they will have to pay somebody that owns it in order to have their little name put on it, or I am number 333. Not, you have to pay me $20 and tip me another $5 to drive over there. Is that correct?
Chairman, that's correct. We would anticipate in the residential garage that would be part of their lease that they could reserve a space for a fee. And then in the south garage, we would anticipate that there would be office tenants who may choose to reserve spaces for their employees.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Boy, this is all confusing. So let me just, regarding the phasing stuff, I agree with all that. It's just the times of the economy right now, so I think there's no issue with that. I'm really having a hard time just wrapping my head around this whole parking thing. So the north garage that's wrapping the multifamily, that garage is specific for the multifamily parking, correct?
Correct.
Is that sized with the amount of stalls that the multifamily is required to have right now?
It is. There is approximately 40 spaces, I believe, in excess in that garage that, with the original approval, were intended to help serve the hotel, and there's also a coffee shop as part of the multifamily building. And so those excess spaces beyond what is required to park the residential were anticipated to be for the hotel and the coffee shop. And then so those ones would continue to be reserved for those users with 20 spaces available on the ground level.
Okay, so in the multifamily code, isn't it already that multifamily developers are supposed to provide one covered spot per unit, correct? So is that the equivalent of a reserved spot?
It is, and there's some additional parking requirements depending on how many rooms you have in your unit. And so we did the calculations, obviously, as part of the design review application, and that garage is sized appropriately for the number of units they have and the makeup that they are in terms of number of units.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, so that north garage, that's for the multifamily. It's got adequate parking in there, stalls to meet the multifamily code requirement, and technically, there's usually one space per unit provided. Are you saying that that reserved unit, that reserved space, would now be leased to that unit? Should they want a reserved space?
The applicant might be better to answer how they plan to
Okay.
manage that, but
Okay, so we'll table that one. Now let's go down to the south garage, when that's part of phase 2. And how many reserved spaces are in that one?
they will have a total of 486 reserved spaces in the south garage.
And that's from the hours of 7 to 5?
Correct.
And who is using those spaces between 7 and 5?
They are able to be reserved by the office users.
Okay, so 470, how many spaces, 477? 486.
486.
Reserved spaces between 7 and 5 strictly for that office building?
Correct.
Not multifamily or hotel? Okay, now I get it. All right. Yeah, I need to learn more about that north garage now, because if that one, if the anticipation is that one, we're going to call these reserved spaces for the units that are there, and if the intent is those reserved spaces are going to be leased to the people living there, I just don't think that's a good idea, because there's nowhere in the multifamily, in the zoning, in the land development code that requires that. If I'm understanding correctly, I've done a lot of multifamily stuff in the town, that within the LDC, it already requires that one covered spot be assigned or reserved to a unit. So if that's the case, and now we're saying, well, we're going to let the operator now charge money for that, I just don't think that's fair. So we'll have the operator come up and correct me if I'm wrong with that. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Ashley, I think my question is simple. At build-out, like when all is said and done, we've gotten through the phasing, everything, you said that they've met the minimum parking requirements for the development. Is the town getting a surplus? Are we getting spaces towards the district in excess?
We are not.
Okay, so it's just meeting, so there's not going to be additional spaces?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Bianchi, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I guess my question and concern were kind of echoed what Commissioner Anderson, the road he went down. So my understanding is the multifamily building as proposed, that will park itself. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the surface lots in phase one will be to cover the other planned retail and mixed use that's going to go in there?
Chair and Vice Chair, or that is correct. There are an additional 20 spaces in the residential garage that can help to satisfy some additional requirement and provide proximate parking for the coffee shop, for example.
Okay. And so those the lot counts, those are either based off of units or the town's methodology for square footage based on land use?
Correct.
Okay. And then I guess the next point's kind of more of a design point of view, but how do we protect or how do we provide kind of a safe route for pedestrians down that Paseo if it's all just surface lot, at least in phase one? And then my question down the road, or my concern down the road, would be when that goes under construction in phase two, how do we propose routing all those people from parking to the north and coming down? So again, that's more of a design consideration, but I'm just curious on that.
Yeah, so as part of this plan, this is for illustrative purposes only. We have done a first review of their design review application, but that was prior to us working towards this plan that shows parking on that lot. And so when they do submit for their design review application, I anticipate that there will be some sort of delineation that shows that that's the Paseo, and if not, staff will certainly make a comment to ensure that it's clear that that's a pedestrian path. Yeah. I'm not quite sure at this time what that looks like. I think we anticipate the applicant to propose something, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure, we could definitely leave that for the
But
applicant.
during construction, you could just push them out onto the sidewalk on Gilbert Road. I mean, there's,
I think that's that's probably the easy way, yeah. But I was just curious if the Paseo was supposed to be kind of more of a feature of the development, so. All right, thanks, Ashley. Thank you, Chair.
My pleasure. You know, one question I have is, so what we're saying here is they're doing the minimum parking by code for the uses going in, and they want to charge for that. So like, let me just, you know, in my mind, I'm trying to get this. So if I wanted to put in my little office, I would have to have X number of parking spots. I don't understand how they will lease an office if somebody says, I don't want to pay extra for parking. Because then technically, I would say that's out of code. You have people in an office that don't have an assigned spot. So for me, the semantics of how this works is convoluted at best. But nonetheless, I want to just take and not continue to berate Ashley too much and say if the applicant would like to come up, we would love to hear from.
Well, Chair, if I can maybe address that very quickly. I do want to put Alex on the hot seat for a minute, though. So we have crafted this language in a way that we felt pretty comfortable with. They can reserve no more than 477 spaces as part of phase one, and they can have no more than 963. So I think if they're finding that their office tenants are not wanting to pay to reserve those, we're not requiring that they reserve that many. It's up to that as a max.
Okay.
So you could still lease an office space and not rent a space. You just don't know that you're going to guarantee a spot when you go to park.
Yeah, and I guess that, to me, it opens up a whole nother can of worms to where it's like, well, if somebody runs a food truck and wants to pay more money, then I can rent an office, but we don't have any parking places for you, so tough luck. You know, take the light rail. And I'll say light rail in Gilbert and see what happens. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and we can move on to the applicant to hear the answers to all of these questions.
And I want to yell at Adam before we're done, just for, I don't know if we'll find a reason.
However, he did
On the
not-
agenda, sir.
He didn't wear a jacket tonight, so I don't know if he'll come to the podium, so.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. Alex Hayes, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. Adam was going to come up, but Commissioner Fay, he wanted me to come be the punching bag tonight, so happy to take the blows tonight. I know everybody's familiar with this project, and I think I'll skip a formal presentation, and perhaps we can just discuss the two specific requests, and happy to answer any questions you have. I know there are a number related to parking. For the phasing plan, we can touch on that first, because I think there were a couple questions there. I think, as everybody knows, everybody wants this project to come out of the ground as quickly as possible, the town, the applicant, neighbors. And the request for the phasing plan is simply just the condition of the capital and debt markets and as they relate to office development, and there's the challenges with project financing. So in order to bring the project forward as quickly as possible, we wanted to request the phasing plan to bring forward the balance of the site. And phase one would include, as we've discussed, the multifamily, all of the retail, all of the off-site improvements. That would include, in all phases, it does encompass the entirety of the off-site improvements, as well as the Paseo. And as Ashley mentioned, there is a revised development agreement that does have the schedule of development that would require phase two, the office and garage, and potentially the hotel, although the hotel can come in either phase, and they're currently talking with some potential users that I think everyone would be happy with at this site. So regarding the parking, we appreciate the time that the commission gave us to work with staff to kind of hammer out some of these issues and get into some of the specifics on the numbers to make sure we had the correct level of detail included in the amended PAD and the condition regarding parking. I think it's important to note that in phase one, the project will be parked per code and with enough spaces to support all the uses on site. In phase two, it will also be parked per the shared parking study that was submitted and approved, recommended for approval by this commission and approved by town council. So I think in phase one and phase two, at full build out, you're looking at a completely self-sufficient site in terms of parking. The only time when there would be a likely deficit is the very short period of time during the construction of phase two when the commercial garage is being built. And in that time, we'll be happy to work with staff and come up with a solution that works for that interim period. I think there were some questions about the reserved parking and the ability to charge. It's customary for projects like this to be able to charge for parking spaces, and I think what the change that's being made here is that the covenant as written in the original PAD approval just prohibited that outright. This project will always include complimentary parking for the public, and that will be complimentary parking that is sufficient to support the public uses. The parking that will be reserved and have the ability to charge for would be the garages and the commercial garage for the employment uses, the office uses, and in the multifamily, but only as it relates to the reserved spaces that are potentially assigned spaces. And then the hotel to allow for payment for overnight parking, which is, I'm sure everybody has stayed in a hotel and is accustomed to an overnight parking charge. I think, again, there's never an intent to charge the public for the use of the public spaces. Regarding the valet, as you probably experienced, the vast majority of valet is complimentary and is you can tip or you can not tip, but the intent is not to charge for valet. With the hotel use, where the charge would come in is for overnight parking, which again is customary for those types of uses. I think at that point I can turn it over to let you ask any questions, and hopefully I can provide you answers, and if not, I can certainly get those for you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Anderson, or, yeah, go ahead.
So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that the multifamily garage, they're going to charge the residents there for a reserved space.
Have the option for.
What do you mean option to?
For a resident to reserve a assigned space.
Okay, I've never heard of that in a multifamily, and I think, I don't know, I just, that's really killing it for me, to be honest. I understand charging spaces in the south lot for the office spaces where a tenant goes in there, you know, they have 10 employees or whatever, they want to make sure their employees, you know, can get to work in a timely manner. That makes sense. But to charge a resident extra fees for a parking spot that nowhere else in the LDC code requires it in other multifamily sites in this town, to me is ridiculous.
Well, to be clear, there would always be an option, an unpaid option for a reserved.
Where do they park? Where do they park?
Covered park.
There's an option for them to not park in a parking garage
No, there'd be
in a unit where they live?
There would be available spaces in the garage. The question would be whether the tenant would like a reserved space, whether it's at their.
Every apartment community, if I've ever designed, has at least one reserved spot that goes to that unit. And now that you're taking that away from them, and if they want it, they have the option to pay it, or they can go find somewhere else to park, it's ridiculous to me. Let's move this on to somebody else.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to clarify what you were saying. You were saying that they still have another free spot? So like I say, okay, I don't want to pay, then I'm not in this one, but I go to that one.
That's correct.
So, I'm not sure. I'll let someone else open up, because I just wanted to try to think of that math, but Commissioner Simon.
I just have a quick clarifying question. At build-out, when this is actually completed, what's the difference in parking from what we started with 2 years ago when we approved this as a commission?
It's the exact same.
Okay, thank you.
I don't necessarily know that's true. In terms of like the geometry, yeah, you're right, it is. And since we've been talking here, I've come around to the commercial, assuming that the property owner doesn't segregate a bunch of spots, so the only ones that are reserved are the ones that the individual business, we've got this parking for the businesses, these guys are paying extra to have their reserved spots, the rest of them are for the other businesses. If my business doesn't reserve it, you may have to park on the top floor. I'm concerned that the property owner, seeing this as a profit center, will reserve extra spots, that there'll be some transactional costs here, but okay, I'm surprised by myself, because I'm coming around to the commercial one. I'm kind of okay with what we're talking about. The residential one and the hotel one still don't make sense, particularly the valet portion of we see this in restaurants in Phoenix, where you've got these big, great restaurants. Doughbird comes to mind. The Oso's up in Phoenix, not our one, where they've got a great restaurant and they've got a tiny parking lot, and so the valets take the whole thing. And yeah, the place is packed to the gills over here, and over here it's empty, but that's because the valets have it. And if the only way to get a spot is to valet, and you've got a deficit in the town because a bunch of cheap people like me don't want to pay the valet, so we're going to go find spots in I think we're contributing to the deficit. And the residential one, I don't see that working. My head's kind of always been conceptually bogged down, kind of where Commissioner Anderson's going, is that I don't see it working. In fact, I don't see how it can work, because it's more 24 hours. I don't see how I think what you're portraying it's just the same as the business one. Either you pay to reserve and get the convenience, or you just park, but I don't see how it can work that way. So I'm kind of not getting my head around that one. So I don't think it's necessarily a big deal for the business one, but I think for the other ones, we're going to have reserved spots sitting open a fair amount of the time, because they're reserved either by the property owner or for the valets. And the people who don't want to pay to put their car in there, which is why they're sitting open, will now be causing an externality and burdening, in addition to the fact that the land development code and all that stuff, so. That's where I'm still kind of trying to get my head around.
And
I'm sorry, I meant to be meaner to the attorneys than Ashley. I'm sorry, Ashley. These guys get paid to get beat up on, and it feels like I beat up on you, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
it's still
black eyes,
early.
yeah.
It's still early.
yeah.
Give me
So
time.
give
He
me
may
one
say
sec.
something stupid in a minute, and I'll jump on
I'm
it.
going to go to Commissioner Gage, but first, I just want to go back to, so in the garage for the multifamily only, how many total spaces, both charge and no charge, exist for the multifamily?
Well, I think it's helpful to think about it as reserve spaces. And so in the multifamily garage, there are a total of 477 reserve spaces, 427 of which are behind a gate for residents. Part of the reserve spaces within that multifamily garage includes 50 spaces for the hotel.
Okay.
And then there are 20 public spaces in that multifamily garage.
And so let me ask you this. Let's assume a world where everybody that moves into these multifamily says, I'm not paying for parking, this is America, forget you. Where, you're saying they have parking there. Where are those 427 people going to park that is not in one of those spaces?
Well, this is a question for the multifamily operator, but they have to provide adequate parking for their tenants.
Right.
And those spaces will be available within the parking garage. So if they don't have a demand for reserved spaces from their tenants, they still have to provide a covered space.
Okay, and so in other words, we're saying they all could be charged, but if everybody says, no, I'm not gonna pay, then everybody just, it's a free-for-all, you park anywhere you want. So what we're saying is, we're trying to say that the market is going to determine how many of these are allowed to be paid, but everybody from there is going to park in that garage.
That's right, Chair. As you've well noted, the land development ordinance, the code requires a one covered space per tenant.
So, and so going back to the airline, I think, outside of baggage, but seats, because they now charge you for that too, and it's like, this is a super, super duper duper sweet seat up front, but if everybody on there does not pay that fee, they randomly assign them one. And so we're talking about that same kind of an environment where they create the illusion that, well, you better get this now, but if people just choose not to, they're still going to get a spot in there.
You could still get 1A.
Okay. Okay. Now, Commissioner Gage, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've been very patient over here. Mr. Baugh has come up.
Seriously now?
Commissioner Fay, would you like to go?
May I?
I don't want to take this opportunity away from you.
Do we need his name for the record?
Mr. Baugh, please.
My name is Adam Baugh, and if Alex will kindly give me that jacket so I can present. There is a confusion here, and I need to clarify so we can remove all concern. There will not be an extra charge for any residential parking space. You pay your lease, you get to park for your spaces behind the gate. There's not a fee on top of what you'd already pay for your lease. I was trying my best to not jump up, but your concern is the same concern I was recognizing in the back. I stepped out to make sure there is no charge for any parking space in addition to what you just normally pay for your rent regardless. And that is unusual, and that's why I want to make sure I clarify that. So as the project exists, you would have an expectation provided required parking for your multifamily project, and that required parking still exists behind the gate that's particularly for the residents only. In front of the gate is the rest of the balance of the parking available for the hotel and the extra surplus that's in the garage. I hope that addresses the concern much better, and I apologize for letting you lead to that conclusion.
Please turn your microphone on, Commissioner Fay.
The residential one is just, there is a parking, this is now just became Southwest Airlines. Everyone gets a spot. Why are you reserving spots at all? It's just everyone gets a spot. No one's paying extra for it.
I don't think we've decided this row is unit 201 or 302, or if they'll just be, reserved
okay.
beyond the gate. But the reality is beyond the gate will be only for the residents of the multifamily project.
Okay, well, that does answer my residential.
Well, and I just want to make a point of clarification. It is not Southwest, because that is a free-for-all based on your A suite. This is more like Allegiant, where if you choose not to pay at the end, you get given one, but they give you a menu of all
No,
these seats, and
that's
Tony
what
knows
they haven't
that.
determined yet, is if they're Southwest or Allegiant.
And frankly, whether it's striped per unit or not, I mean, that's really an operational question at the end.
Right.
I think the thing is, when I look at some of the office projects like in Camelback Corridor, and you have a garage next to it, you know, the tenant on the third floor gets these spaces, they're designated on this particular floor of the garage. And so through the lease, they'll probably charge the tenant, you know, the fee to have those designated spaces on that particular floor. But after 5 p.m., they remain open to the public. And what's important to understand is in the parking garage for the public, there's no gate. A public can park on the first floor, the second floor, third floor after that 5 p.m. hour, but we want to make sure that the office allocation that's required per code actually can park the office, and so that's why they do that. And the way the development agreement was written previously, and it's since been amended by council, so what you're seeing in the STIP is actually a reflection of what the development agreement says now, council. Essentially just allows them to charge their office tenant, the commercial tenant, the ability to park in that space while not charging the public for that. We did not want to have a barrier that you had to pay a token or a fee to get in and then discourage people from trying to shop here. But we do want to make sure that if you're an office tenant on the third floor or fourth floor of that building, that you do pay your fee to be able to park in that parking garage. It's a costly expense, and that helps funnel the cost to keep it free for the public. So I'm going to pass it back to Alex.
Okay. Okay, even without the jacket, that was pretty good. I want to, before we go back, I want to go to Commissioner Gage, unless everything has been clarified now.
No, I have a different question. Are there any hotels that charge for parking overnight in Gilbert? I know we've all paid for parking overnight at hotels.
Vegas.
In Vegas. Yeah, and that's expensive. But this is not that situation. So I'm just curious, and I don't expect you to know this, but it seems like that would be weird to pay for overnight parking in Gilbert, Arizona.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. You know, I can't speak to whether there are any specific hotels that are charging, but if you look at what is the anticipated on this site and look at the development agreement and the PED, what's contemplated here is a boutique lifestyle hotel. And so the idea is to kind of bring a design forward, higher end hotel to this location. And their ability to charge was important. Whether they actually do is another question.
Okay, is it possible to, I guess with the fees, I'm trying to understand, are you trying to be able to add a revenue center for the users? Then, if that's not what it is it possible to accomplish what you want to accomplish with just reserving spaces for certain uses during certain times? Does there need to be a fee involved? Because it seems like that'd be great for whoever is operating these buildings. We get nothing from that as a town, and the idea of this was to provide, you know, some public parking for the town as well.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think it's important to note that all the public spaces are available complimentary. What the developer found in you know, with their project financing efforts, that there was a lot of commentary from their capital partners that the ability to charge was something that was important for project financing. However, this would be something that would be dictated by the market. This is not, we're not requesting that the hotel or the commercial or multifamily garages have to charge for the parking. It's just removing the prohibition from them doing so.
Okay, I think you answered my question by saying it's important for them to be able to charge for parking for financial reasons to make this project pencil. So it would be an additional revenue center for them. That's just the point. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just trying to understand what it is.
I think it's maintaining the optionality of that, but it's not necessarily a requirement for the project to pencil out.
Okay, and can we remove the ability to have to charge fees for parking for residential from the STIPs? Is that a thing? Is that what we decided? Like, those spaces should be available to the multifamily users, the residents, and so
In the
we can
development
remove that?
I think we'd be comfortable with that.
I don't know, and the way I understand this is if somebody wants to pay extra, they can get their special front spot. But no matter what, they get a spot.
They get a spot.
Right.
And was
No,
some of this
okay.
worked out in the development agreement? Because if that was already developed
Yeah.
with staff and with legal counsel, then I don't need
Chairman
to step on.
Mund, I want to make sure I remove all doubt. There's no extra revenue source fee, pay per parking for the multifamily. You go behind the garage, you've got your spaces available to you. It's not a pref fee on top of what you would already pay for your lease. I think to Chairman, I almost promoted you, Commissioner Gage's comment. It's not just the ability to help finance it, it's also the ability to maintain a parking garage long-term that's really being utilized quasi-public, quasi-private, and having kind of that fee helps make sure, like the city, the town who has to pay for their garages maintenance over 20, 40 years, just helps provide that reserves to maintain that longer term.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and I honestly think that there's people who want that higher end feeling for themselves that will want to pay. I, much akin to my fellow Commissioner Fay, am cheap and would find the cheapest one anywhere, but I do understand some
I'd be
people
right
like
there with
to.
you.
Okay, anyone else? Commissioner Davis, please.
Hi, sorry to make this longer. A quick question I have is, so if somebody who lives in the multifamily has a guest coming to see them, do they park in the public area or do they have access to where the residents park, like in a typical gated apartment complex, where you're gonna go back in there and park? How does that work? Because I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, does that take away from the residents' guaranteed parking spaces?
No, there are guest spaces out there, actually guest spaces outside the gate and inside the gate.
Outside the
yeah.
gate? Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify, if they're outside the gate or if they're coming back in the gated area. That
They're-
makes me feel better. And I understand that the cost of the structure, you know, causes the need to have to maybe charge for some of those. I kind of think of, you know, big cities where you're paying for those parking spaces in those garages, and maybe to have an assigned space, you pay that. So I get that. So, and to answer Lisa's question, I've paid a resort fee in Tucson that included parking. So that's all I have.
Commissioner Simon, you have some more to add, please?
I just enjoy your presence, and I want to keep Adam here as long as possible, so I'm trying to think of things to ask. No, so I just, going back to the hotel and the pay for spots, I don't have a problem with that. I guess I look at it from a perspective of, if I was a hotel owner and I needed spots and I wanted to reserve those spots and I was going to make an arrangement to have those, go back to your airline analogy, Southwest allows you to check a bag without a cost. So why don't we just add a little bit more to everybody's cost or price and just make it? So whether you charge by the space and have it as a line item, or you charge it in the nightly cost of the room, it's getting spent. It's going to be charged. So in this way, they're just giving them the ability to split it out, I guess is how I see it. So I don't know that I really have an issue with that. I'm glad that you clarified the residential parking piece of it, because I wasn't necessarily understanding that. So that's all I had.
Thank you very much. That was a lot. Okay, would anybody like to ask the applicant and/or Ashley any more questions, or would anybody like to make a motion? Oh, I didn't, you're right. There's that dictator again. Is there anyone out in the public that wishes to speak on this item? I don't have any cards, and perusing the gallery, I do not see any hands. So I will close the public hearing then and bring it up to the dais. At which point, my past comment will be if anybody else would like to discuss further, or I would entertain a motion.
I do have one. All of the discussion has gotten me there for reasons I said on the commercial. And Adam's last point, I hate to give credit here, but got me there. The residential now parks itself. It's reserved, it's not open to the public, but I'm not looking to this property to alleviate the deficit that's already burdening the Heritage District. I'm just looking to it not to cause an externality. So that, to me, is okay. It seems like it's not causing extra problem, whether it be everyone gets a reserved spot in there or everyone gets a free-for-all, but they're all there. It takes care of itself. That's fine. I'm still not, if the hotel has just enough spaces for the hotel and charges, and people like me, that's enough to make us go outside of the hotel, that causes an external burden on, and I think it will. I think there's plenty of parking close enough, depending on when you're hitting it, that if you've got 300 people at the hotel, 150 of them will choose to park elsewhere. You will, so Commissioner Gage's question, can't we do the same thing you did for the multi-phase and just put your people behind and they could, except for the profit center wanting that issue, and that causes the externality. So that, I know it's probably 1/10 of the issue I started with, but that one thing still hangs out there to me. That one piece is the difference between having the hotel park itself versus the profit center, I think still causes an externality to the city of Ghent, to the town of Gilbert.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Commissioner Gage.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Fay, I think that we're kind of getting, and I started this, so it's my fault, but we're kind of getting out of the scope of what we're up here to do. But like Commissioner Davis said, is you can just charge a resort fee and parking would be included in it, and a hotel guest wouldn't know any better.
Right, they wouldn't be incentivized to park somewhere else then either.
Right. Yeah. So there's your business model. You're welcome.
Right, well, and I was going to add
Solved
to
all your
that, and
problems.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gage, to speak over you, but Commissioner Fay, I was going to kind of disagree, because I feel like every time I travel, whether it's to Vegas or someplace in California, and I'm staying at a hotel, the hotel's charging me a parking fee, and I just pay it. I don't look to go park someplace else and say, oh, no, I don't have a vehicle, because that's the hotel I'm staying at. So with regards to the proximity here, I don't think you're going to get situations where somebody's going to look at what's being charged before they go stay at a hotel. If they're coming in via Uber or whatnot, they don't care. They're not going to get charged a fee. If they're driving in, they're going to want to stay at the hotel that they're driving to. Yes, there's other proximity with parking, but I don't think you're going to get that question. And so I'm not saying that it's a non-issue, but for me, I don't necessarily see that it's going to be as much of an issue as I feel you may think it is. So, with all respect.
Thank you, and I'm glad you added the all respect. I personally would also just add that, to the point of, if these people are going to become a burden to the town, we also have to then take into the account that these people will go and patronize the restaurants there. Those restaurants have parking requirements that will not be filled by patrons who are at the hotel paying, so therefore it'll be kind of a +1. So assuming that people that stay at a hotel in downtown Gilbert are there because they want to patronize the restaurants, it does wash some of that away, in my purview. And I also, the designation of a boutique hotel, which I'm no genius, I actually don't even know what exactly that means, but it sounds fancy. And so I'm assuming that within the boutique, like we said, we don't want it to be a Motel 6, that within that type of a entity has this. And so I'm okay with it as it is, but I do understand that the parking is a huge issue, and I think it's something we need to discuss. Vice Chair Bianchi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess my thoughts on the parking is if it's meeting what's called out in the LDC and it's meeting the provisions of the development agreement, I don't have much interest in talking about who's, what we should charge, who should be charged. I don't think that's what's before us tonight. But I look at this, the case is very heavily conditioned. And normally when I see that kind of tingles my spidey sense, because I'm almost thinking, are we forcing this to make it work? But however, I think in this case, I think it's providing the flexibility that the applicant's looking for, as well as providing adequate protections for the town. So in that regard, I'm in favor of this. So unless anybody else has any comments.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Any additional comments? Or all due respects? Okay, I'll entertain a motion if anybody would like to make one.
Irregardless.
I implore a motion.
Chair, I would, hang on one second, my iPad shut down on me. I'll make a motion to approve the case set before us, and I'm sorry, my iPad is not cooperating with me at the moment.
Z2308.
Yes, please, Z2308. I make a motion to approve Z2308 as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table from Commissioner Simon. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Anderson. Any more discussion? All right, please. Voting has been closed. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That's the final item. Now moving on to administrative items. Administrative items are for the commission discussion and action. It is to the discretion of the majority of the commission regarding public input requests on any administrative item. Persons wishing to speak on an administrative item should complete a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to address. The commission may or may not accept public comment. We do not have any administrative items outside of number 12, Planning Commission minutes. We need to consider the approval of the minutes from the study session and regular meeting of February 7th, 2024. If anyone has anything to add or make a motion.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th, 2024 as written.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Simon.
I'll second.
Second from Vice Chair Bianchi. Please vote. I think we still have the, oh, there. Vote, Pat.
I'm sorry, I was pushing my thing, but I guess it passes anyway.
Vote,
I'm
Pat.
actually not opposed to it. I was a mistake.
Commissioner Fay is a nay.
Commissioner Fay is shown as a nay, but he would like to amend that to a yay.
I'd like to amend it to I don't care enough either way.
So, okay, we're going to leave it as is. 6-1, motion passes to approve the minutes.
I'm sorry. Sorry, everybody.
In spite of and with all due respect to Commissioner Fay. Okay, communications. If there was an executive session, that's where a public body may convene in an executive session at one or more times during a meeting as needed to confer with the town attorney for legal advice regarding any item listed on the agenda as authorized by ARS 38-431.03.A.3. There is no executive session, so I will bring it here for report from the chairman and members of the commission on current events. Well, I will just add that going back to Councilmember Anderson's point, that we heard a lot here about multifamily parking, and we will continue to. And I think that the bills that he's mentioning, I just want to put it on the record, the HB 2570 and SB 1112 and HB 2815 and HB 2576 could and will have direct impacts on the community and what we do here in regards to the multifamily. I'm just going to read a couple of things as to what an article stated about what these will do. It will be requiring larger cities to permit accessory dwelling units on lots for single-family homes with limits on the restrictions that can be placed on them. It will be mandating that larger cities must permit residential and mixed-use development on land zoned commercial, office, retail, or parking space. And it also will be imposing new requirements on cities to speed up building permit inspections. So a significant amount of the concerns that we deal with here and the work that we try to do appear to be attempting to be thwarted and shoved down our throat and blaming a housing crisis on towns and cities. So I just wanted to make that note and put it on the record that everybody should be very well aware of these bills and take appropriate action. Okay, now, moving over to report from the Planning Services Manager on current events. Eva.
Thank you, Chair. First item, I'd like to congratulate Vice Chair Bianchi on his project being completed. The South Concourse had a ribbon cutting. It was a beautiful event at a beautiful South Concourse, so just wanted that to be acknowledged. Also, at the last meeting, I had mentioned that there were some junior high girls. They were homeschooled and they were entering they won the Arizona Future Cities and they were going to Washington, D.C. I know Chairman Munge, you had met with these students as well. And they were the only team in the nation to receive 2 society awards. They won Best Nuclear Science and Best Smart Grid. So congratulations to them. And lastly, I'd like to recognize our Planner 2, Samantha Novotny. She will be moving to Pennsylvania, and tonight would have been her last meeting, but she had nothing on the agenda, but just wanted to thank her for all the work she's done and all the cases that she's brought before you.
Thank you, Eva. Yes, very much thanks. And I will also add that a person in the public here, Ms. Julia, is a mentor of mine, and she came here to the Planning Commission and came through to see how the sausage is made in the town. And she wants to be an engineer, so, you know, God willing, she still does, and, you know, I appreciate her being here and to meet all of you, so.
Or an urban planner.
Yes, or an urban planner, as Keith tried to say, right. Okay, now I'd like to entertain a motion to close the meeting if there is one.
Chairman, I'd move to adjourn.
We have a motion from Vice Chairman Bianchi to adjourn. Second,
I will second.
Commissioner Gage with a second. Please
will
vote. We have an abstention. Vote passes 6-0 to 1. Thank you all for being here. Meeting adjourned. HB 2570 and SB 1112. So it's like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because really what he's saying is, because, you know, so there's a housing crisis. And so what they're saying is, well, these towns, they're just getting in the way. We need to have affordable housing. We should be able to do it. And it's like, hold on a second, so you're saying that developers should be able to come into anywhere? Like, you talk about the multifamily that's going into that lumberyard? That would be done like this. Poof, you know, which would